أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العظيم. I was born in London in the 1950s, and one of my first memories is of being very aware of the problem we were having with the nuclear war, the prospect of nuclear war. And there were many demonstrations in London at the time against nuclear weapons. And for me, at the age of 5 or 6, I remember wondering what it was going to be like to die when the Russians dropped an atomic bomb on London. So I think that made a big impression on me, because if you think you're going to die at any moment, then certain things become much more important than others. And throughout my childhood, I felt that everybody around me was basically unaware of something very, very important. And they didn't even seem to be that they were unaware of this thing. So as soon as I started to think for myself, I started to look for whatever it was that, in England at least, nobody seemed to know, and yet was very, very important. And that led me to, when I finished school at the age of 16, and for me what was important at that time was to travel and to research different cultures and different religions so that I could find what it was that was missing. So I left school and ended up going to America to study, where I met representatives from different religions and began to put certain things into practice in order to be able to find what it was. I now know, of course, that what it is that people are asleep, and that unless you wake up, you're not going to know what's going on, and you're not going to be able to produce a society that is capable of managing its own well-being. And that was something that also struck me very much as a child, was that there was a lot of injustice in the world as well, and that, of course, it was the beginning of the environmental scares as well, which have just got worse in the last 50 years, so that now it's quite clear that we're destroying the planet, and that there is a huge amount of injustice in the world, and that something is needed to bring things back to what you could imagine is a normal state of affairs for human beings to be in.
I was born in Paris, in the 2nd arrondissement, an area where people from various cultures live together. I was born in a family of Catholic tradition that was not much practicing, except for the religious festivities of Catholics. Because I was quite an active child, my parents decided I should follow religious classes. They thought that it may calm me. Then I discovered a new concept, a concept I did not know or understand before, the concept of a creator. Although I did have many questions about Christianity, I was attached to the faith, without really understanding the religion itself. On the other hand, I used to have many Jew friends that often invited me to the Shabbat. I also had many Muslim friends that invited me during Ramadan or for Eid. This interaction was always in my life, and it had an influence on my way of thinking and on my lifestyle. When I married and I had children, I was bringing them up as Catholics without a real conviction. In fact, I was in search of something I could not find in Christianity. I continued meeting more people, more Muslims, and I started feeling a clear attraction towards Islam. Although at that time I did not see a purpose in converting. For me, God was universal at that time. That Jesus and Muhammad were prophets was not a problem at all. In fact, at that point, I did not even realize that I was not a Catholic anymore. Regarding my education, it is only quite late in my life that I decided to continue my studies after having my children. I was over 40, and at that time, I realized that education, especially with children, attracted me. I felt that transmitting one's knowledge was important, and I believed everyone should try to pass on the good knowledge they have. I was also interested in Islamic classes. Islamic classes that were actually taking place in my university. I started attending them. And one day, I ended up putting surahs on my wall. Although I could not understand them, I found them very nice, and I was moved by those surahs.
Okay, well, I moved to London, back to London, in 1974, and I joined an organisation which was a New Age kind of esoteric religious organisation, but very serious. And as part of our studies, we had certain practices that were taken from Islam, as well as from Buddhism and other religions. So I was familiar with Islam to a certain extent. I went to America to study full-time, and I met many Muslims in America. And at that time, I became convinced that Islam was a deen of truth. But at that time, for me, it was a spiritual matter, and it wasn't really necessary. I learned to do the prayer and so on, and I learned the Arabic for that. And I was given a dhikr to do, along with all of us, in fact, in that group, which was the dhikr of Ihdina Sirata Mustaqim. And we did this dhikr constantly, knowing what it meant as well. You know? And it was, again, when I came back to England after that, that Allah's guidance began to lead me in a certain direction, and started to have children. And I decided that London wasn't a good place to bring up children, so we moved to the country, completely by Allah, to a city where there was a large community of English Muslims, probably the only, at that time, this was in the early 80s, the only large community of European indigenous Muslims. And it was in meeting them, people like me, white people, English, Americans, with children, families, wives, children, living together as a community with the sincere intention of establishing the Deen of Islam in their social life as well as in their personal life, that I realized that in order to understand Islam deeply, you have to practice it. You have to practice everything. You can't pick and choose certain aspects of it that you like and leave others. So it was in that sense of wishing to understand Islam more deeply that I accepted Islam fully. I already knew the prayer, I knew enough Arabic, so from the moment that I said the Shahada, it was praying 5 times a day. It was just before Ramadan, I was fasting and praying, and at that time we were very serious